Hi, hi, hi. Welcome to another episode of Fault Lines. I am going to go over one of the props that I'm actually pretty excited about. It encourages a lot of accountability, and I'm actually pretty excited about it. It's Prop 41. Now, this prop would require an audit of programs funded by new or increased state special taxes. So, for example, a special tax would be Proposition 63's original Mental Health Service Act. And it's obviously now replaced by Behavioral Health Services Act. And it created a 1% on anyone who has a personal income of over $1 million to fund those services. So if Proposition 3 passed, which extends that tax permanently to existing high income tax rates, that was approved in 2012, they would audit that 89% of K through 12 schools, the 11% to community colleges, and preserve roughly $5 to $15 billion per year in state income tax revenue. Wouldn't it be nice to see where these dollars are going, and that if they're actually funding these programs? And wouldn't it be nice for that to be done by all programs? I would settle for the ones enacted after January of this year, so we shall see if this works. This proposition would require audits of programs funded by new or increased state special taxes. So the state auditor would conduct a one-time audit before a voter initiative special tax goes on the ballot. So before it even hits the ballot, there's an audit that would happen on all of these all of those programs. So plus reoccurring audits every 4 years for every program funded by qualifying special taxes enacted after January 1st of this year. Meaning that if you see that this program is a good thing and you agree with the audit's findings and you pass it, that program gets audited every 4 years. Isn't that great? Oh, I love this. Okay, so it would restrict certain new taxes from being excluded from California's existing voter-approved spending limit. So California has a constitutional limit on how much the state and local governments can spend from certain tax revenues. And it's commonly called the GAN limit. It was created by Proposition 4 in 1979. Some new taxes can be written so that their revenue doesn't count toward the spending limit. So here's a simple example. Imagine California creates a new tax. So new tax, $5 billion a year. Okay, the new law says the $5 billion raised by this tax doesn't count toward the state spending limit. So under the current rules, the state could potentially spend those $5 billion without it counting against the GAN limit. Under Proposition 41, however, for a qualifying new state tax enacted, that $5 billion tax revenue would count towards the spending limit, meaning that we would have a much better grasp on how much our government is actually spending and be fiscally responsible with those dollars. So right now, those special taxes are not counted towards the GAN limit. Main arguments for this proposition is taxpayer accountability, which is a long time coming, given how high the taxes are in California. The new state special taxes should be audited to determine whether these programs receiving the money are actually effective. It prevents waste, so regular audits could identify inefficient programs and potential savings. Isn't that great? You would actually know which programs work. It protects the state spending limit, which means that these new taxes shouldn't be structured to get around California's existing voter-approved spending cap. And particularly important to Prop 40, Prop 41 would effectively block or substantially undermine the billionaire tax, which I'm all for. If you give the government an inch, they will take a mile. If they can tax a billionaire, as much influence and power and wealth that they have on their actual income rather than their taxable income for the year, what is to stop them from doing the same thing to you and I? Government spending oversight and tax accountability is incredibly important, especially now and especially in California. So here are the arguments against this prop. Naturally, it's a backdoor way to kill the billionaire tax. Absolutely. I'm not disagreeing with that. But why do you need to worry about how the money is spent? If you truly mean what you say about raising the money, you have no reason to be afraid of the accountability of an audit. Yes, examine that money, if that money would actually be effective in what you're calling that money to be funded to. Okay, it could restrict voters' ability to raise money for programs they support. By putting new special tax revenue under a spending limit, the measure could make certain future tax initiatives much less useful. There are already too many taxes in California. If people want to support these programs, they can choose to donate to these programs privately. Stop forcing everyone to support these programs. Shouldn't you want to have tax initiatives that go to effective programs instead of an enacting percentage to tax everybody, and it would end up going to an ineffective program in the first place that is flushing dollars down the toilet? It is wasteful and it is irresponsible. Audits could become a political obstacle. Okay. The required audits happen before a citizen tax initiative even qualifies for the ballot, potentially adding costs and complexity to the initiative process. This isn't a political obstacle. It's an obstacle that needs to be jumped over. If you truly believe in the tax initiative you're supporting and gathering signatures for, wouldn't it be nice to know the program is effective before the tax is enacted? You as the voter would have the information you need to inform your decision in the voting booth. I am all for that. Don't let the wording scare you. It'll cost money to do the audit. If the prop for a new tax passes, the audit will be paid from it. Meaning, if the prop doesn't pass, it'll cost possibly millions of dollars per year, and it's a drop in the bucket. Wouldn't you rather, if this prop passes, the audit is not paid for by taxpayers, it's paid for by the passing of the prop. It pays for itself. And if a prop doesn't pass, you have saved money in the percentage of the taxes that weren't added on top of the taxes we pay to pay for this additional tax. And this is a drop in the bucket to pay for an audit, to make sure that this money goes to programs that are effective. Again, we need fiscal responsibility. We need accountability in this state. In 2024 to 2025, in the fiscal year, California collected about $7.94 billion in gasoline excess taxes. They collected $7.94 billion. Drivers purchased about $13.34 billion taxable gasoline. And you're complaining about the price of an audit to see where our money is actually going and whether it's effective? It could reduce funding for programs voters deliberately choose to fund. The critics' concern is that voters might approve a tax, but then find that spending the resulting revenue is constrained. Under normal initiative process, supporters collect signatures. When you reach 25% of the number required, Prop 41 would trigger a state auditor review of every program that would receive money from that proposed tax. Isn't that great? The audit would include how effective the program is operating, how efficiently it uses the money, ways to improve the program, ways to reduce the program's annual costs by 10%, and write a written summary of the audit. The written summary would be included in your voter information guide, by the way. The LAO estimates, which is the auditor, estimates that the additional pages could cost the state a few $100,000 per qualifying initiative in printing and mailing costs. That's nothing. Like I stated before, in 2024 to 2025, California collected $7.94 billion in gasoline excise taxes, and drivers purchased about $13.34 billion in taxable gasoline. These figures of the additional costs of this audit are nothing but a drop in the bucket, and it is necessary. If you complain about how these programs are running inefficiently and do not agree to an audit, you have no right to complain. You have forfeited the right to complain. Vote in this election and vote yes on Prop 41 to audit these programs and see where our tax money is going to. All right, this has been another episode of Fault Lines California with me, Vanessa. I got passionate. I get stern face. So, again, this prop is a drop in the bucket. It's a no-brainer. We should audit our programs. All right, this has been Fault Lines California. I'm your host, Vanessa. See you on the next one.